Based on Emoto's findings, I was prompted to investigate the power of words. At first, my research was yielding very little. I've often heard spiritual and personal development speakers and even authors discuss this concept, but it was often based on experiential, scriptural, or anecdotal evidence. Evidence that may very well be valid, but would be difficult to validate or invalidate. But this year I decided to reread a book by Dr. Robert Anthony. He's one of my favorite authors in the personal development field. Although mostly unintended and synchronistic, I ended up finding a few quotes that provided me with some interesting insights into the power of words. Robert Anthony, by the way, earned a PhD in behavioral psychology from Pacific Western University and has worked as a psychotherapist, neurolinguistic programming practitioner, master hypnotist, and personal performance trainer. He has authored over 15 books, and some of his most known works include The Ultimate Secrets of Total Self-Confidence and Beyond Positive Thinking. This quote and all that follow are from his 1979 self-help book, The Ultimate Secrets of Total Self-Confidence. I'm going to begin by sharing what I think is the most relevant quote for this discussion. Successful experiments involve photographs taken of ordinary drinking water while it is being prayed over and blessed. Preliminary photographs of the water showed very thin vibrations, but at the same water was being sanctified, it registered significantly increased radiation, indicating that the power of positive thought can be transferred to an object. Although it may sound like Dr. Anthony is indeed referring to Emoto's studies, that isn't possible because his book was released in 1979 and Dr. Emoto's studies began in the mid-90s, as I said earlier. It is common knowledge that when plants are praised and spoken to positively, they thrive and grow. But when they are condemned and rejected, they become stunned or even die. If you have this effect on your plants, just think of the effect you have on another human being. And let's not forget that plants need water for photosynthesis, a process plants use to create their food. As water enters a plant stem, it travels up to its leaves. This is where the photosynthesis process actually takes place. Without water, this process cannot occur. But Anthony doesn't stop there. He also suggests that metal atoms respond differently to different personalities. Here's another direct quote from his book. Have you ever noticed how some people always have trouble with their automobiles? Their vehicles just don't respond to them, yet another person talks to his responds trouble-free trip after trip. It would seem that even inanimate things can sense love. Preposterous? It has been scientifically demonstrated that metal atoms respond differently to different personalities. Now, first, the idea that water has a vibration and that it increases in radiation when consistently exposed to positive thought. If you remember, he also said that positive thought can be transferred to an object. So there's really three different ideas here that he's left us with. That was the first. The second is the idea that plants thrive when spoken to in a positive manner, and that we should consider the effect our words have on other human beings. Third, the idea that metal atoms respond differently to different human beings. So let's begin by exploring this idea of vibrations, the first idea. At this point, I'd like to introduce an old friend of ours. I'm sure that there's little need for introduction, but I'll do a quick recap. Albert Einstein was born on March 14th, 1879, and was a German-born theoretical physicist. He developed the general theory of relativity, now considered one of the two pillars of modern physics. Of course, he is most known for his mass-energy equivalence formula, E equals mc squared. There's a famous quote by Einstein that I'm sure you've heard. Everything in life is vibration. There's another physicist with a similar opinion of the world by the name of Nikola Tesla. Tesla was born on July 10th, 1856 in modern-day Croatia. He was a Serbian-American inventor, electrical and mechanical engineer, physicist, and futurist, most known for the design of the modern alternating current, or AC, electric supply system. He said that if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. The interesting part is that Tesla would likely disapprove of the juxtaposition I just made. He was critical of Einstein's theory of relativity, and he has even been quoted as saying that, "I hold that space cannot be curved for the simple reason that it can have no properties. It might as well be said that God has properties. He has not, but only attributes, and these of our own making. Of properties we can only speak when dealing with matter filling the space. To say that in the presence of large bodies space become curved is equivalent to saying that something can act upon nothing. I, for one, refuse to subscribe to such a view." That was Nikola Tesla's quote. Tesla claimed that he had developed his own physical principle regarding matter and energy. When he was 81, he noted in a letter that he had actually completed a dynamic theory of gravity that would once and for all put an end to idle speculation about curved space. Though he also noted that he had worked out all the details, his theory was never found in his writings. That remains an unsolved mystery. Unfortunately, there's no way of knowing what Tesla's theory was or if he actually had one. So despite the fact that both Einstein and Tesla were physicists, their disagreements force us to conclude that their views on the vibration and the world didn't just come from the studies and disciplines they were engaged in. But to get back to this idea of everything is energy, I found an interesting article by Arjun Walia. He's a writer for Collective Evolution, an alternative media platform that produces articles and videos that urges readers and viewers to expand their way of thinking. Not unlike what happens here at The Question, right? Unfortunately, I couldn't find any additional information on who Arjun Walia is, besides the fact that he's written a lot of articles for different publications and that he's appeared in a documentary. But according to his article called "Nothing is Solid and Everything is Energy, Scientists Explain the World of Quantum Physics." Quantum physicists discovered that physical atoms are made up of vortices of energy that are constantly spinning and vibrating, each one radiating its own unique energy signature. Therefore, if we really want to observe ourselves and find out what we are really beings of energy and vibration, radiating our own unique energy signature. This is fact and is what quantum physics has shown us time and time again. This certainly seems to fall in line with what we've been learning about the heart's EM field and its connection to Wolfgang Pauli's The World Clock, as well as black holes and wormholes that we learned about in previous gatherings. Walia also quotes Richard Conn Henry in his article. Henry was born on March 7, 1940, as a professor of physics and astronomy at Johns Hopkins University. He is the author of one book and over 200 publications on the topics of astrophysics, various forms of astronomy. He says, "A fundamental conclusion of the new physics also acknowledges that the observer creates the reality. As observers, we are personally involved with the creation of our own reality. Physicists are being forced to admit that the universe is a mental construction. Pioneering physicist Sir James Jeans wrote, 'The stream of knowledge is heading toward a non-mechanical reality. The universe begins to look more like a great thought than like a great machine. Mind no longer appears to be an accidental intruder into the realm of matter. We ought rather hail it as the creator and governor of the realm of matter.'" Henry makes reference to a certain Sir James Jeans. He's referring to James Hopwood Jeans, born September 11, 1877, in Ormskirk, Lancashire. He was a physicist and mathematician and was the first to propose that matter is continuously created throughout the universe. He's probably most known as a writer of popular books about astronomy. But what is the significance of what Richard Conn Henry said about creating our own reality? Let's join Walia for his conclusion. Studies have shown that positive emotions and operating from a place of peace within oneself can lead to a very different experience for the person emitting those emotions and for those around him. At our subatomic level, does the vibrational frequency change the manifestation of reality? And if so, in what way? We know that when an atom changes its state, it absorbs or emits electromagnetic frequencies, which are responsible for changing its state. Do different states of emotion, perception, and feelings result in different electromagnetic frequencies? We already talked a little bit about the process of photosynthesis, in which plants convert light energy into chemical energy that can be used to fuel its activities. But what about this idea that when plants are praised and spoken to positively, they thrive and grow? Well, the Mythbusters once conducted an experiment in which they got hold of 60 pea plants and divided them into 3 greenhouse groups on a rooftop. The first group of plants was exposed to a soundtrack that featured loving praise. The second group was played cruel insults. And then the final group was not given a soundtrack at all. I watched a little bit of the show, and the hosts were also shown verbally praising the plants and hurling insults at them. They conducted the test over the course of 60 days. And what they found was rather interesting. They discovered that the silent greenhouse performed the poorest of all, with lowest biomass and smaller pea pods compared to the other greenhouses. Interestingly, they found no major differences between the greenhouses that were exposed to the 2 soundtracks. Whether it was loving praise or cruel insults, the soundtrack appeared to have a positive effect on the first 2 groups of plants exposed to sound. This is somewhat of a narrow study in the sense that they only experimented with one type of plant and only over the course of 60 days. According to the website ProFlowers, the theory that plants can benefit from speech was first published in a book called Nana, Soul Life of Plants by German professor Gustav Fechner in 1848. Fechner was born in 1801 and was also a philosopher, physicist, and experimental psychologist. He's the founder of psychophysics, and he inspired many 20th century scientists and philosophers. A little deeper digging revealed that Fechner held an animistic view of the world, which means he saw animals, plants, and other inanimate objects as possessing some kind of spiritual essence. In light of this, his view on plants isn't terribly surprising. But you don't have to search far and wide to find other books that support this view of plants responding to sound. ProFlowers says that some scientists and researchers have found evidence that plants do indeed react to a number of environmental stimuli, including vibrations. Sound is considered a form of vibration, so it's not too far-fetched to think that sound could have some kind of effect on plant growth. However, some scientists believe plants evolved to respond to vibrations so that they could survive even in windy conditions. Penn State University also covered this idea of plant growth in some depth. They caught up with Rich Marini, head of Penn State's horticulture department, and he said, "There's evidence that plants respond to sound. Wind or vibration will induce changes in plant growth. Since sound is essentially vibration, my guess is that vibration is causing response." There is also a 2007 paper from scientists at South Korea's National Institute of Agricultural Biotechnology that proposed that 2 genes involved in a plant's response to light are turned on by music played at 70 decibels, which is about the level of a normal conversation, according to Marini. What the Korean researchers found was that there was a different response from the plants depending on the frequency of the sound. The higher the frequency, the more active the response. Marini also backs up the idea that a plant's response to vibration may have been a matter of survival. According to Marini, plants exposed to wind produce a growth retardant hormone called ethylene, which causes the plant to be shorter and to have thicker stems. So plants exposed to wind can better survive very windy conditions. Naturally, there is a common sense element to plant growth, as we all know. You must provide them with the light, water, and mineral nutrition necessary for them to grow. The example he gave was that of a vehicle. His idea is that if a person talks positively to the vehicle, they will experience fewer problems on their journeys. He noted that even inanimate objects can sense love, a notion that our friend Gustav Fechner, an animist, probably would have gotten behind. Metal, as we know, is a material that is hard, opaque, and shiny. It has good electrical and thermal conductivity, and it can be hammered or pressed into a shape without breaking. Metals are also fusible, meaning they can be fused or melted, and they are also ductile, meaning you can draw them out in a thin wire. Metals are malleable because they consist of layers of atoms. These layers of atoms can slide over one another to take a new form when they are bent or shaped. Metals form giant structures in which electrons in the outer shells of the material are free to move. The metallic bond is the force of attraction between these free electrons and metal ions. The fact that metals are good conductors of electricity and heat also has to do with the fact that electrons can move freely throughout the metal. In order to better understand the interaction between speech and metal atoms, if there is indeed a connection of some kind, we have to return to this idea of vibration. I came across a page called Universal Law online, and on it I found a lot of interesting thoughts concerning the laws of the world and vibration. They have a video called The Truth of You, and in it they propose that we are vibrational energy beings that create by our thoughts and manifest by our emotions and feelings. They also note that human emotions have the ability to change the shape of DNA, and that your DNA has a direct effect on the external world. Everything is made of energy and has a distinct frequency or vibration. The divine law of vibration states that nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates. With today's technology, quantum physicists have shown that matter may appear to be solid, but when you look at it through extremely high-powered microscopes to see its smallest components, moleculars, atoms, neutrons, electrons, photons, and so on, it is space filled with frequency and vibration. You, your table, and your car seem solid, but it is the frequency of the vibration of the energy that makes these things different. Not only does your body, but your thoughts, words, desires, intent, and feelings have distinct vibrations. Your vibrations affect everything around you in your environment, including people, animals, vegetative, and inanimate objects. And they in turn affect you and all become part of universal knowledge. The philosophical and scientific basis for this law of vibration can be found in quantum physics and Einstein's theory of relativity. Energy is related to matter and the speed of light. This is Einstein's famous E equals mc squared equation. When two frequencies are brought together, the lower will always rise to meet the higher. This is the principle of resonance. I found another article called Scientific Evidence, Thoughts and Intentions Can Alter the Physical World Around Us, on a site called The Mind Unleashed. Admittedly, they don't have the best of reputations online, but the reason I wanted to cover it should become fairly clear in a moment. The article suggests that human thoughts and intentions can alter physical reality, such as the molecular structure of water. Does that sound familiar? That's right, they're referring to Dr. Masaru Emoto's studies. They also talk a little bit about the rice experiment, which is something I wasn't familiar with prior to putting together this presentation. Apparently, Dr. Emoto placed portions of cooked rice into two containers. On one container he wrote "thank you," and on the other, "you fool." He then instructed school children to say the labels on the jars out loud every day when they passed them by. After 30 days, the rice in the container with positive thoughts had barely changed, while the other was moldy and rotten. The experiment itself is very similar to his water crystal experiments, in which he found that intentions may be able to influence the structure of water. Based on everything we've had the opportunity to explore together, I have a couple of questions that simply must be asked. We've learned that metal is a conductor of electricity, but we can't forget that vibration, frequency, and energy are all terms commonly used in reference to electricity. Some experts even describe our thoughts and the activity in our brains as electrical signals. Based on this evidence, is it possible that our words, thoughts, and intentions could have some kind of effect on metal atoms or inanimate objects? Now, believe it or not, the closing of this presentation came together rather synchronistically. I was planning on returning to and ending with Dr. Masaru Emoto's studies on water. But in the end, I found that my job was already done for me. So I was researching how our thoughts, feelings, and words affect metal atoms and inanimate objects. Everything pointed right back to Dr. Emoto's findings. In a previous presentation on synchronicity, Fred shared a simple intellectual grid in which the question of coincidence might be positioned in our thought process. The spectrum runs from completely crazy at one end to completely proven in the middle to completely possible on the other end. Coincidence sits somewhere between completely crazy and completely proven. This safe zone is a catch-all for everything we experience that can't be explained. And we've become accustomed to this kind of intellectual safety. And tonight we considered a lot of evidence, research, and conjecture that can't necessarily be explained. It runs the spectrum from completely crazy to completely possible. From a pragmatic standpoint, I think it's worth considering the following. Do we live in a world of cause and effect? And if we were to view our words as a cause, then what is the effect of the words we speak? Is there a difference between the language of somebody that's happy and peaceful in life and someone that's angry, frustrated, depressed, or resentful? If everything is energy, then is there really that much of a difference between human beings, plants, or metal atoms? And ultimately, do our speech patterns have any bearing on the trajectory of our lives? Thank you.